Welcome to the Explainer. All right, let's get right into it. Today, we're going to build the complete legal framework you need to absolutely nail taxation, especially if you've got exams coming up. We're going to cover the core principles, the constitutional authority, and of course the landmark cases you just have to know.
Okay, so here's our game plan. We're going to start with the absolute basics. What is a tax? Then we'll look at its nature, its key characteristics, and the legal framework that holds it all together. After that, we'll see how the courts have handled it and wrap up with the limitations and core principles. Simple as that. Let's go.
All right, first things first. We have to establish the black-letter law. So what, legally speaking, is a tax? I mean, if you can't get this definition right, you're going to have a tough time with everything that follows. It's truly the foundation.
Okay, this definition looks formal, but it's gold for exam answers. You absolutely have to break it down into three key parts. First, it's compulsory. You don't get a choice in the matter. Second, it's for a public purpose. Think roads, schools, defense, stuff for everyone. And third, and this is super important, there's no direct quid pro quo. You're not buying a specific service. You pay your taxes, you get a civilized society. That's the deal.
And look at this. It's not just one country's idea. Here's a quote from the High Court of Australia, and what do you know? They hit on the exact same points. Compulsory, for a public purpose, and not a payment for a specific service. This tells you it's a universally accepted legal concept. So when you're making an argument, this is your solid ground.
So we've got the definition down, but what's the nature of taxation? Because it's about way more than just collecting money. We're talking about a core expression of a state's power.
Let's really dig into these qualities. First off, it's an inherent sovereign power. Basically, if you have a state, you have the power to tax. They go hand in hand. But, and this is a huge but, it's not unlimited. It requires legal authority. It has to be compulsory and enforceable by law, not just by force. And again, that public purpose thing, it's non-negotiable. It has to serve the public good.
Okay, so any government can create a tax, but what separates a good tax system from a terrible one? Let's get into the characteristics, the principles of a good system. And we're going to start with some ideas that have been around for centuries but are still incredibly relevant.
You have to know this name, Adam Smith. Way back in the 18th century, he came up with these 4 golden rules, or canons, and they're still the foundation of tax theory today. Think of it like this. A good tax should be fair. That's equality. It should be clear and predictable. That's certainty. It should be easy to pay. That's convenience. And finally, it shouldn't cost a fortune to collect. That's economy. Simple, right? But so powerful. Now, Adam Smith's ideas are the bedrock, but of course we've added a few things over the years. A modern tax system has to be adequate. I mean, it has to actually bring in enough money to run the country, right? It also needs to be simple and transparent, so people trust the system. It's got to be flexible enough to change with the times. And the big one, its ultimate purpose is to create the maximum social advantage. It's all about making society better off.
Okay, pay close attention here, because this is a classic exam question. Let's talk about fairness, or equity. There are 2 kinds you need to know. First is horizontal equity. Super simple. People in the same boat should be treated the same. If you and your neighbor earn the same salary, you should pay similar taxes. Easy. Then there's vertical equity. This is the idea that people in different boats should be treated differently. Someone earning millions should pay a proportionally larger slice of their income in taxes than someone earning a minimum wage. It's all about progressive fairness.
So we've seen that taxation isn't just some arbitrary thing the government does. It has to be grounded in law. And for those of you studying Indian law, this is where it gets really specific and really important. We're talking about the ultimate source of that authority, the Constitution itself.
Okay, commit this one to memory. Article 265. This is the big one. If you're a law student in India, you have to know this article. Think of it as the ultimate gatekeeper for every single tax in the country.
No tax shall be levied or collected except by authority of law. It sounds so simple, doesn't it? But the power in that sentence is immense. This is the ultimate shield against the government just taking your money. What it means is that every single tax has to have a valid law behind it, a law passed by Parliament or a state legislature. No law, no tax, period. It is that fundamental.
And it gets even more specific. The Constitution doesn't just say make laws, it says who can make laws about what. That's where the 7th schedule comes in. Think of it as a detailed chore chart. List 1, the union list, is for the central government. They get to tax things like your income, as long as it's not from agriculture, plus stuff like customs duties. List 2, the state list, is for the states. They handle taxes on things like agricultural income and land.
This division is the bedrock of India's federal system, and yeah, you definitely need to know it for your exams.
Okay, so theory is great, principles are great, but where the rubber really meets the road is in the courtroom. How do judges actually apply all these ideas? Let's dive into some landmark cases to see how these principles get shaped in the real world.
First up, we're heading back to 1874 with a classic U.S. Supreme Court case, Citizens Savings v. Topeka. And this one asks the most fundamental question imaginable. Can the government tax you for just anything? Specifically, can tax money be used to benefit a private company instead of the public? Now, I know it's a U.S. case, but the principle it establishes is absolutely global.
And the court's answer was a resounding no. The judgment was crystal clear. There can be no lawful tax which is not laid for a public purpose. Bam. Just like that, this case established the public purpose doctrine, which basically puts a leash on the government's taxing power. It says you can't just use taxes as a piggy bank for private interests. It has to serve the public.
All right, let's bring it back to India with P. Marayappa Gunder versus CIT. Now this one's a little more technical, but it deals with a situation that pops up all the time. Imagine this. Person A is legally owed money, but person B actually receives it first. So who pays the tax? This case gets right to the heart of what income really means in the eyes of the law.
So, what did the Supreme Court decide? They said the tax liability follows the legal right to the money, not whose hands it passed through. And this hammers home a crucial principle you need to tattoo on your brain: substance over form. Tax law cares about the economic reality of who is entitled to the money, not just the technical steps of who collected it. It's about what really happened, not just what it looks like on paper.
And for our last case, we have a real clash of the titans, State of Gujarat v. Ambika Mills. On one side, you've got a charity, Ambika Mills, doing good things. On the other, you've got the local government, which needs money to provide essential services like roads and water. So, can the city tax the charity? Which public good wins out?
Well, the court sided with the municipality. The judgment made it clear that public purpose is a very broad concept. It's not just about achieving some lofty goal. It can also be about preventing public mischief, like, having a city with no functioning services. So the takeaway is that even a good cause, like a charity, can be required to chip in for the fundamental needs of the community.
All right, let's bring it all home. We've talked about all these principles and rules, but let's be real, no tax system is perfect. So to finish up, let's look at the limitations, the criticisms, and the constant balancing act that is tax policy.
You see, this is the really tricky part. Governments are always juggling. They want fairness, but they also need enough money. They want the system to be simple, but if it's too simple, it's full of loopholes. There's always a risk of being arbitrary, and the burden on taxpayers can get really high. This constant tension is what makes tax law so challenging and, frankly, so interesting.
So, I'll leave you with this question to chew on. Given everything we've talked about, is a perfect tax system even possible? We know it has to be lawful. We know it has to serve a public purpose. Those are the lines in the sand. But can you ever truly have a system that is perfectly fair, perfectly efficient, and perfectly simple all at the same time? Maybe not. And for your exams, showing you understand that tension, that gap between the ideal and the reality, that's what will set your answers apart.